thank you guys for coming. I'll just start in case you haven't seen my work. Let me just throw the reel up. Thank you. Out of curiosity, how many of you knew my artwork before coming in here today? Okay, cool. How many of you guys know what Kitbash 3D is? Awesome. That's it's actually what I'm hoping for, so that's great to see. For those of you who don't know me, I was a map painter and an art director in the film and games industry for a decade. And I stopped being a professional artist about 5 years ago when I started Kitbash 3D. Now I'm co-founder and CEO of Kitbash, and I'm mostly on the business side. And one of the questions I get a lot, especially at events like this, is why did you stop being an artist? And the quick answer here is I had a really unhealthy relationship with art. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this talk, because I'm hoping that through some of the things I learned in my career, I can help you guys have longevity in your career, to not burn out, to not fall out of love with art. And in the beginning, I loved paintings. I loved working at studios, working on AAA games, working on blockbuster films. It was such a fun thing. But as I accomplished more and more of my professional goals, they kept making me feel emptier and emptier as we went, until I finally stopped. And you know, what I've learned over the last couple of years, it wasn't actually anything to do with art. It was about not understanding accomplishment and what happens after you accomplish your goals. And this is something, you know, we rarely talk about. A lot of the times we're in talks about how to get to your goal. And we're all, if you're goal driven like I am, you're so focused on that moment and putting everything towards getting there that we don't take the time to say, well, what happens a week later? What does that actually mean? And maybe in this room, some of you have accomplished a really big goal, and you know the feeling I'm alluding to. It's this kind of feeling of sadness, emptiness, or even just feeling lost. I think a good visual for me is, can you imagine being at a stadium show singing and having hundreds of thousands of people singing along with you, and that high you must get from that, and then going home afterwards and like raiding the fridge, like how weird. Chris Hadfield is an astronaut, and he kind of nailed this. He wrote a book called An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, where he talks about landing from the space station and having spent an entire career focused on how to become a jet pilot, and then getting into the astronaut program, and then even then, how many astronauts actually get to go to space. And he finally did all that, and then he lands, and it's over. And that pinnacle moment of his career is behind him. For me, I set out with a pretty simple goal. I wanted to paint every day. I was an awful student. I hated school. The idea of going to college seemed awful to me. I just wanted to be able to financially support myself with art. And I remember so vividly the first day I got my first studio job, and it was such a relief. I knew I was going to have a career as an artist. And it was a goal I got to kind of live every day. Every day I was like, I can't believe I get to come into this studio, or I get to work on this project and get to work with these people. It was really exciting and fun. And kind of as I went on doing this more and more, I started to watch in awe of these painters like Dylan Cole and Dussault, who would do these big establishing shots on movies like Avatar or Lord of the Rings. And as I watched those, I was working in television, doing small little set extensions here and there, and I looked at those paintings and was like, that's what I want to do. Like, how do I get into film, and how do I not just work on any film? I want to do blockbuster movies, and I want to do the big hero paintings of those blockbuster movies. So that was my goal. I set that in the ground and was racing towards, how do I get to do the hero paintings on blockbuster films? And it took me 5 years to accomplish that goal. In that time, I changed jobs 18 times. I worked on 79 projects before I got my blockbuster film. I did 262 paintings before I got my hero professional paintings. And these numbers kind of all just mean the same thing. Like, I worked my ass off trying to get to that place. And then finally in 2013, I got the call from Digital Domain to come work on Iron Man 3. And that was it. I was like, yes, I made it. My blockbuster movie is here. And I just put aside everything else and was like, I am focused. I'm going to live and breathe Iron Man for the next 6 months. That's all I care about. I worked every weekend. I stayed late every day. When you start on a project like that, you're kind of the new person, so they give you the small things. And I would do the small, simple paintings, and every time I delivered something good, they'd give me a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one. Until I finally got my hero shot, the like, Iron Man saves the day type of shot. It was such a crazy thing, 6 months so intense on this, and then we wrapped the film, and the studio was like empty. This isn't, this is Digital Domain. It was empty, and it was such a weird feeling. And I remember coming home after the last day on the project, and all I had thought about was that project. And so I just dropped my bags at my front door, went to my couch, and just stared at the ceiling for like hours. I really didn't know, like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Like, this was all I was trying to do for 5 years. And that's really when that sense of emptiness started to come over me, of like, man, my goal is gone. This thing that has been my driving force, I did it. And we went to the cruise screening. I'm kind of unrecognizable, but that's me on the left. And the movie came out a few weeks later, and we went to the cruise screening, and that was the only time I ever saw the movie. I haven't even seen it since. And it had all the reception and reaction that I had hoped for. It was all over billboards and magazines, and it really was this, spectacle thing, and I got my shot kind of all the way across it. But as I looked at them, it really didn't matter anymore, because I had already checked the box. It's like, that was that was yesterday. What the hell am I doing now? And that was kind of the first time I really like realized what is this thing where you kind of have this sudden downshift from like driving full force towards a goal to all of a sudden aimlessly kind of roaming around, and that's very disorienting. And it can be very painful too. It didn't stop me from doing some victory laps, and I continued to work on big movies and games for many, many years. But most of the time, I didn't really know why I was doing it. I was just kind of sustaining, and that's fine. You know, it's good to sustain, and sometimes it's good to just enjoy the moment. But after a while, you know, we as artists, we need to grow. We need that challenge or some goal to kind of be working towards. And without that, sometimes we can kind of feel stagnant or stale. But then this idea of like, well, why are you going to chase a goal if you're going to end the goal and be staring at a ceiling and feel empty afterwards? It's like, okay, well, what's the point of this? Radically different style. A few years later, I started tinkering on the side on playing in Unreal. And I would wake up early before work and play with making a game in Unreal. And it really was playtime. It was just for fun. And I wanted to challenge myself to kind of do a very different art style, do something cartoony. And I remember being a kid and talking with my friends about how cool it would be to one day make our own video game. So I actually reached out to some of my childhood friends who I hadn't seen in years. I was like, hey, you know, I've been working in games for a decade. Like, do you want to actually make that game we always wanted to make? And that really became the theme of this game. The theme was our childhood and that kind of imagination. And I started really putting a lot of time into this thing on the side of, you know, doing tons of concepts, learning how to program, and this new goal started to form of really wanting to make my own game this time, not work on someone else's. I started saving up and hiring, you know, modelers and animators and sound designers and composers. And then, you know, with that, finally, I started taking less and less freelance work and less studio jobs, and made the jump to become a full-time indie game developer, which a lot of people see this and are like, what the hell? How did this come from you? And this doesn't look like any of the stuff you do. Anyways, this is what we made. This was this little side passion project.
It was 8 minutes before bedtime. I was fresh out of ammo and the monsters were closing in. I needed that last power-up. Some nights, you just gotta be quick.
Thanks. We started making this game, and well, we made the game, and I started showing it to Banks Boutte, who's my co-founder at Kitbash, before Kitbash, and we decided to start a game publishing company. I knew nothing about game publishing, but you know, I really loved this game. It was a passion project. I really wanted this to get out into the world, and so you know, we really started learning everything about video game publishing. We learned about marketing and PR. We made trailers and went on press tours. We did all these trade shows all over in LA and San Francisco and Boston and Seattle. We were constantly traveling with this game and getting to know all the people at IGN or Microsoft or Twitch. I now know every Twitch streaming video game player. It's great for bar trivia one day, but we we were kind of on this crazy tour of making sure we could get this game out into the world, and it kind of all culminated in this launch of the game in Vegas, in this like big party to launch the game out into the world. And at 12:01 that day, we like hit the button while streaming, and the game was live, and it was out into the world. And once again, the journey was over, and I went home from there to just stare at a ceiling. And it was like, damn, it got me again, like I didn't see it coming. And this time, it wasn't actually, it was worse than a feeling of emptiness. It was actually a feeling of loss, because this was like my project. This was my baby, and now it was out into the world, and there was nothing else I could do for it. And I kind of mourned it being my project and my little thing here. So I started talking to a lot of other game developers. Luckily, I had met a lot of them, through the circuit of publishing a game, and calling them up being like, hey, what's going on here? Like, I put out the game, it's done really well, but I just feel depressed. And all of them were like, yeah, that's normal. Like, it's actually so normal that there's a term for it. It's called post-release depression. And when I heard about it, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, why is this a thing that we all just accept? Like, no one, I had to dig to find these articles, by the way. This is like hidden shit where only game directors who have gone through a release know about this. And it's like, did no one think this might be like a helpful piece of information for everyone when we were going and making the thing in the first place? Maybe we could like prepare for this in some way, or like find a different approach to avoid this altogether. And that really started a big journey for me of trying to understand how do we keep the positive parts of goal setting, as in setting a North Star that challenges us to grow, and how do we eliminate those negative parts of it, of the goal leaving us empty, or leaving us feeling lost or even depressed. And that's really when Kitbash became the next project. I've now spent a third of my career working on Kitbash. And one of my big focuses when we started Kitbash was longevity. I was giving up a 10-year-long art career, and I was switching over to a career in business. And I thought, if I'm going to switch over to this passion needs to last me a lifetime. Rebuilding all of the knowledge and a whole new career, even though it's in the same industry, it's a very different career. I don't want 5 years from now, 10 years from now, to be feeling lost and empty and go switch it up again. I want to do this. And so in this process, with that focus on longevity, we've gotten to try a lot of things out at Kitbash, and I've gotten to learn a lot with the focus of avoiding that post-release depression. When we started Kitbash, Banks and I were, we were working on Sleep Tight. We were working in Unreal and game engines, and we had been reading Snow Crash, so the metaverse was front and center on our minds. We knew we wanted to work on the metaverse. We didn't know what it was, but it was like, this just sounds like such a great opportunity to like do things differently, to write new rules. But we were 10 years too early, so we started brainstorming what could we do in the meantime to contribute to this inevitable industry. And so from Banks's garage, we started building 3D model kits. We had learned in Sleep Tight that assets took up half of our budget. It was a big part of making a game. And I had known from working in film and games that we had huge teams of people building things like helicopters and buildings and all these different things, and we'd throw them out after every project. And it was just so much of our team was dedicated towards that we knew, hey, this is a problem we need to solve, and we can build them once for every studio. But more than just building assets, we wanted to be a part of this art community. So we started shooting promo videos and interviews and tutorials and all of these things to launch Kit Bash with, working with PR and building our website, all of this stuff. It was a full project just to get ready to launch. And I remember the night before launch, this was our original website, and it was not working at all at like 4 in the morning, and the press release was going out at 9 a.m. announcing that we launched this company, and we were expecting all this traffic to come, and I'm getting in the car and driving to El Segundo and pounding on someone's door being like, fucking website's not working, wake the fuck up, And we were so, on edge, and finally we got the website working an hour before the press releases come out, and the whole thing launches, and we're like, okay, now it's time, let the onslaught of kit sales come. And then we didn't get any sales. The first 10 sales at Kit Bash are me testing it that first day, being like, it must be broken. It was so confusing, and for us, we were like, what? We just did all this work for a launch. This is not how the game went. We launched the game, and a bunch of people bought it, and no one bought any kits. And a couple hours later, someone finally bought their first kit, and we couldn't celebrate because we were just so devastated that our launch day went so poorly. And after that, the first week, we started seeing a couple more people start to buy kits, and a couple people started to post what they were making on social media. We started to see some artwork being made with it, and it's like, oh, this is exciting. And what we started to learn was, hey, we didn't cross the finish line here. We just crossed the starting line. All this work to get to this place, this is the starting line. And that was the aha moment for us. We learned that the goal is not to cross some line, it's to keep going. We needed to sell enough kits to be able to build another one. And we needed to do that over and over and over again. Radical shift from how we had approached goals in the past. And one of the challenges with that is if the goal is to keep going, if there's no finish line, it becomes even more important to clearly define, well, why are you doing it? If you don't have a certain place you're trying to get to, why to do this? As we kind of challenged ourselves with this idea of why, financial motivation is just not enough. And we always say that if finances was the goal, we'd go work in finance. We'd go work for a bank. It's way easier to make money on a bank than it is to make money as an artist. So we kind of started to explore this idea of what are the things that get us excited, that would excite us for a long time to come. We were very excited about the metaverse and the promise of that new technology. It became this surprise of how fulfilling it was to see people make things with these kits. And then the best was seeing someone who had never used 3D be able to make their first 3D image. And know that maybe they wouldn't have done that if we hadn't given them the tools or built these tools. And so this kind of led us to the mission of the company, which is to enable and inspire creators of the virtual frontier. This mission is super carbonating for both Banks and I and our whole team. It really gives us this sense of purpose of, yes, enable people, allow them, give them the tools that they need to make these things, but also inspire people, get people excited to create. And then when we talk about the virtual frontier, we're talking about movies and video games and interactive installations and NFTs and AI and whatever the hell it is. It's anyone who's pushing technology and art forward. And that is that space that we're so passionate about. This mission really aligned us on why we're doing this, gives us a clear path forward. And it's so important because in over the years, there's so many decisions that you have to make of what path are you going to take. And by being able to go back to this and remember, hey, we're doing this because we want to enable and inspire, we can always make the right decision to keep us on that journey. And this mission's led us to doing things like putting on our own online art festivals, where we've had over 5 million live people come to our festivals, giving away free kits and doing art challenges. This one was Bright Art Dark Times, where we had 60,000 people posting artwork as part of this challenge when the pandemic started to, can we put uplifting and positive artwork out there? Or even working on larger education initiatives. If any of you have seen Mission to Minerva came out last week, and we're working with NASA and Epic and NVIDIA on totally free education, free kits, things to help people get into 3D for the first time. All of these are big projects that take a team of really dedicated people working hard to accomplish these. And I'm acutely aware when we take on these projects that I don't want anyone to go home and stare at the ceiling. You know, how do we make sure that that doesn't happen with our team and reinforce that? A lot of it is understanding that, you know, this isn't a finish line. This is just a milestone along the journey. And as we hit these amazing milestones, we keep growing our ambitions. This journey keeps getting longer. And we've grown our team a lot. As we start to increase kit production, you know, build software, we have engineers, we have managers and operations and HR and finance and legal and all these different skill sets coming together here on this mission. Everyone on our team comes with such like a diverse background and skill set. And seeing these different skill sets has been eye-opening because everyone derives fulfillment in a different way. The mission is what kind of brings us all in the same direction, but I can say with confidence that's not what most people on our team are doing this for. And people in our ops team, for example, they love statistics. They love project planning. You know, there's all these different systems that, like, for definitely an artist would drive them nuts. Same thing with engineering. Like, I see our engineers like light up when there's a bug or a technical issue to fix. And me personally, when my computer's not working, I just want to chuck it. But they love coming and finding like, what's the problem here and how do I solve it? And that's just so fulfilling to them to get to solve a problem. And across the board, there's all these different personalities and perspectives and passions, all united through this common direction that we're all trying to move in. Our team's, you know, full of these people who take pride in their work. They have this sense of excellence, and they have this desire to be a part of something bigger than themselves. We always say Kit Bash is a support role. You know, it's not about us doing artwork, it's about how do we help someone else do artwork. And that's kind of our whole team is full of people who love playing that support role. And I talk about our teams because really this is one of the big things I've learned is being surrounded by a group of people like that, people who have that sense of excellence, who have that hunger to grow, who are so dedicated, even with the different interests and ways that their brains work and different ways that they find fulfillment. Just being surrounded by that and going and tackling challenges together, that makes it so much fun to be on this journey. You guys following me so far? Cool. I know this is probably not a typical talk. Cargo. This is my next big project. You know, if Iron Man and working on a blockbuster film was my first big goal, making my own video game was my second big goal. You know, Kit Bash never was like, hey, there's like this big project that's going to come out. Cargo somehow became that for me, and I've spent the last 4 years at Kit Bash working on this project, and it's been challenging. It's been intense work, a huge learning curve, and we're a few months away from launching it to the public. But actually, no one's seen this before, so I'll share it with you guys. But here's the trailer for Cargo. Thanks. So it's our first software. Well, I've never built software before. And when this does launch, it's going to be one of those times of like, man, we put a lot of energy and effort into it, and we can kind of see it coming up. And that's something we're acutely aware of now, being 6 months away from this launch after a couple years on this, of how do we make sure that no one on our team goes home after this and stares at an empty ceiling. And a lot of that is making sure that we remember that this is just one of the many milestones on our journey, that this is not the end and this is not a finish line. And when this software comes out, it is the starting line of this. And walking into the Kit Bash office every day, I get so excited to work there, and I want to make sure everyone else does get so excited to be in this space, to get to do the things that we get to do and understand that it is about the day-to-day and the people that we get to do this with. And last month, Kit Bash celebrated its 5th birthday, and it's such a cool thing to get to look back on that, and those little, birthdays are a great time to reflect, especially with the team, and look at the, 100 kits that we've built, or the amazing movies and games that we've been able to contribute to. Or even more exciting for me is the community of hundreds of thousands of artists across the world that use our tools every day. And to remind ourselves that we are enabling and inspiring creators of the virtual frontier every single day. This is a daily pursuit. It's a daily thing to feel the accomplishment of. And it's a mission big enough that we'll never actually cross a finish line on. So what does all this mean for you as an artist? When I look back at my artistic career with a different perspective, I can see that first goal I ever had to do art every day was actually the real goal there. That was a goal I got to feel the accomplishment of every single day. And part of me still does. It's evolved over time, and sometimes that meant working on projects that I was really excited about, doing my own projects, being with other artists, talking about art. All of those different things was living that goal. So I'm going to leave you with this. My hope is that you don't have to stop being an artist to learn this lesson, that you can take this with you. Whether you're an artist at the beginning of your career, a senior artist looking for bigger and bigger projects, a director helming a big IP, if you want longevity in your career and in your passion, try looking at your goals from a different perspective. Start to look at them with these things in mind. Is every success comes with the need for reinvention. This is how we continue to grow. We can't achieve the same thing over and over and over again and expect to feel the same way. Instead, when we get to that top of the mountain, we need to find a new mountain to climb. And that's because we want to be challenged to become the best version of ourselves that we can be. Overcoming new challenges and proving to ourselves that we're capable of performing at that highest level, that's what gives us that sense of fulfillment. And in the end, the happiness lies in the everyday. No matter what, you're going to have so much more time in between the accomplishments, and then tongue twister. No matter what, you're going to have more time in between the accomplishments. You're not going to celebrate those milestones that much. So find a way to be happy in that present time. Do that by understanding why you're doing it, being really clear with yourself, like, why do I want to do this? Understand that the goal is to keep going. Even when you cross a finish line, the goal is to want to be an artist in 10 years, to want to be an artist in 20 years. And make it more fun for yourself. Surround yourself with great people, because that's going to make those in-between times so much more fun. So that's it for me. I hope that each of you get to see your dreams become a reality, that you're able to continue to do that for a lifetime, and that you can enjoy the in-between moments. And thank you guys for coming. Happy to answer any questions. Similar to Bridge, yeah, yeah, yeah. It has its own bells and whistles, but yeah, it's an asset browser. Yeah. Hey. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's good that you're in the place that you're in now. It's good. You're in that like evolution phase where it's time to start finding the next mountain. Um, I just a side note on that. I did this talk in Poland last month for CD Projekt Red, and it was amazing seeing how many of them had just gone through this with Cyberpunk, and they were like, "What the fuck am I feeling right now?" And it's like, hey, we need to talk about these things so that we know that this is a normal thing. And I'm sure similarly they didn't anticipate all the variables that came up for them on Cyberpunk of everything that was going to change and timelines and things like that. I think that's just one of those things with projects as you get more and more ambitious with them is things are going to change. We only control 50% of it anyways. The other 50% of it's chance. It's just, even with, you can make the best thing in the world and it could be the wrong time, wrong place. There's so much chance involved in it. So I think that understanding that you're not in full control of it and being comfortable there, I think actually puts you in a better position for when things change, when variables that you didn't anticipate are there. It allows you to be a little more flexible. Yeah. So just be okay with being on the ride and knowing that you can't control everything. Yeah, go for it.
Have you ever caught yourself trying to define yourself by your successes?
Yeah, huge trap, right? Yeah, it's Dinar Warrior talks about this a lot, which I really love. Of like, if all you are is your art, then when you don't have a good art day, you don't have a good day, right? It's a constant thing. It's one of the big reasons why it's like, I'm not Kit Bash. I'm Max. That's my job. I do that. I really care about it, and I love working there, but that's not who I am. This is who I am. My fiance, my dog, my friends, my colleagues that I love working with, that's who I am. And I'm not defined 100% by, my profession. It's a big trap for artists because art is so personal that it's hard to be successful as an artist without putting everything of yourself in there. But it's also important. That's why we look to the people around us to make sure that we define ourselves by our friends, our family, the people who love us. Let that be the defining factor, and then you can be an artist. Yeah.
So when you became a businessman, you weren't scared to stop being an artist.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a painting in 3 or 4 years. I haven't done a professional job in 5 years. Terrifying to leave that behind. Yeah, and an ego hit too, right? Like, at that point I was working on any project I wanted to work on, I could work on. And then I'm like, I'm not taking it, and all my friends are, I'm doing, whatever, name Marvel, Star Wars, whatever movie at the time, and you're like, man, I could be doing that. It's a tough ego thing to let that go and redefine it. But at the same time, like, at that stage, painting had made me nauseous. I was just like sitting down doing another painting felt so grueling. There was no joy left in it for me. But it was because I worked myself into the ground constantly and kept trying to like find some sort of fulfillment there. I just had a bad framing on it. Like honestly, if I could go back and just be like, hey, can I just enjoy painting every day? Like, can I just do this because I like it? It probably wouldn't have been a very different experience. I probably would be doing it still. Grateful for everything since, but yeah.
Kind of wanted to build off of that. It seems that when you climb the career ladder, the higher you climb, the less art you do. It's like, you are an artist, and then you do great, and then people approach you and you're like, you want to be a lead? Sure, that sounds great, like I get to make more creative decisions, I get to direct other people, give notes, all that stuff. But then you realize that it's like looking at spreadsheets and babysitting vendors on the vendor side. And and I how do you I know we're talking not really about that, it's more going from like an artist to business approach, but how do you balance it? Is it just being like, if I don't like managing, then it's just being an artist, but then it's another ego hit, like, well, I'm not progressing in careers. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah. It's funny, when I first became an art director at a studio, I remember a friend coming over to me, to my desk, when he saw all the spreadsheets up. And was like, is this what you thought being an art director was going to mean? Fuck, no. It's a challenge, and I think it's one of the issues in the industry in general right now, is that it feels like you're going to hit a ceiling unless you move over to management, right? Or that you can't just be an artist, otherwise you're limiting yourself, or you're underneath someone who took on the management potential. Some of that changes with some of the freelancers out there who have made big names for themselves, who become an iconic artist on a project, and then it's like, hey, you can have those big name artists are being able to have an equal, if not better, career than an art director at a studio. I think that forcing yourself to become a manager because you want to climb the ranks, that's a dangerous slope. Like, you do less and less art, which means you might not, if you don't enjoy managing, you're going to hate your job more and more. And then the more you do it, the further away you get from art. So you're just going to hate it more and more and more. If you love managing people and bringing the best out of people, sometimes that's more fulfilling than doing your own painting. Like, if for me, I loved art directing because watching 4 or 5 other artists around me do something that they didn't know they were capable of, and pushing them to go further than they would push themselves was very fulfilling to me, and I loved doing that. But it's not for everyone, and we should be comfortable being an artist. It's enough to be an artist. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Sure. I took a sabbatical, and I highly, highly recommend sabbaticals. And I really spent 6 months learning and doing things not for money, just for myself. And I did a ton of personal art during that time too. That was really great. I got a lot out of my system. I hadn't done a personal painting in 8 years since I started, or like when I was working professionally. So like, okay, who am I as an artist? Led me to the game, started leading me into business, and I started to become, really excited about learning marketing and finance and these things where like everyone else is like, why are you reading those books? Like, I don't know, they're fascinating. So yeah, I just gave myself the time. Yeah. Yep. I didn't see Facebook name change coming. Now the metaverse sounds like a dirty word, so. What's been great about this, in Kitbash, yes, we build assets, but we have to build a lot of technology too. right? And interoperability is a very important part of this. And it's what our full focus is and what we've been building for years and years and years. We've been hyper-focused on one problem of the metaverse. And again, it's such a dirty word right now, which is really hard to like keep saying. Really focused on video games, film, visual effects, digital art, wherever it's going, making sure that we have interoperability working for it. I think what's changed in my mind with it, honestly, no. I still believe it's a great opportunity. I still believe we're years away from it. I still believe it's unclaimed territory that is any person's game. And I still think that there's so many challenges that are going to require so many people to be solving. And for us, I think I'm just grateful that we get to work on it, and we get to work on it with everyone. That we get to work with NVIDIA and Epic and anyone else who's pushing that ball forward and looking at that. That's really what we wanted, is a seat at the table to be able to help in our way. Yeah. Yeah.
How big is Kitbash? How many people work there?
We're 50 employees and then contractors and freelancers. Sorry if I don't see hands too, but yep.
Yeah, so I think one danger of kind of being more service-oriented with your goals is not to be kind of start to feel endless. Like you've all of a sudden like this, like where's all the celebrations now? What do you think is kind of a good cadence for your team? Like how often do you celebrate big milestones?
That's a great question. It's actually one of the things I love about working with Banks, my business partner, is I'm always about what's the next thing, and he's always about celebrating. So we do it once a week. We end every week with, so our game company was called We Are Fuzzy. And the last remnant of that is we have Fuzzy Fridays every week at Kitbash, where we bring the whole team together. Everyone goes around. We make sure we hear from every person at the team. Now we have it broken up into groups because we're a little too big for it. But you say, what was your biggest accomplishment of the week? What was something you learned? And what's something you're looking forward to next week? And then give some gratitude to someone else on the team. And it's this way where, as we're constantly moving forward, we take this moment to just stop and just reflect on what just happened this week. What did we do? Can we celebrate some accomplishments? Can we talk about what we learned? Can we, reflect on the week? And so we do that every single week, and it's our way to solidify the week, to end it, and then go off into the weekend, leaving work behind us. Yeah, a great question.
When I ask you, since like our artists, we want to paint every day. We gotta work out. We gotta hang out. We gotta do little things. Or I want to do this. I want to do that. I found myself like wanting to waiting because maybe thousands of life is not gonna be enough. But how do you break your day down or break your week down in order to achieve your day or your week or your month?
Yeah. Well, first of all, stress plus rest equals growth. So it's like, there's a great book, Peak Performance, on this, but it's this idea of like, if you go to the gym and you're just lifting a weight nonstop, you're not actually going to grow any muscle. It's actually when because you're tearing all the muscle, when you put that stress on it. It's when you stop and you go and sleep that you recover, and that's when you build more. And so it's the rest is an equal important part of the equation here. And it's one of those things for us. We don't work weekends. We don't work late nights. We do 8-hour days, 5 days a week, and that's it, because that rest part is so important for us in order to come in each day and give it our all. And so with that, it's like, hey, we got to be really efficient with our time. For me now in my job, I walk in, I go into a conference room, and I'm just in the conference room the whole day, and just different meetings coming in and out. So I don't have much of a rhyme or reasons for it. I think it's just, the teams kind of dictate where my priorities need to be based on who needs my support and help. And then I just try to make a little bit of time each week to do my stuff, which is I still like doing a little design work, UI design, web design, whatever, like just because it's fun and I enjoy it. So I just try to block off some time for that. But yeah, there's not a good like, hey, the work week is broken up into these things because one week, you know, maybe marketing needs a ton of help and we're working on a big campaign, or another week, maybe kit production, we're starting something new and trying to work through some pipeline issues. Yeah. Free agent. Cool. Anyone else? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate you showing up. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.